All right, it's 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. We do have quorum, right?
Yes.
All right, so call to order and roll call. Sorry, I can't see my button.
Chairperson Rowich,
Here.
Vice Chair Hughes. Vice Chair
Here.
Hughes. Member Cherry,
Present.
Member Marbury. Absent. Member Reuter,
Here.
Member Roth. Absent. And Member James.
Present.
Have a quorum.
Great. Okay, so members of the public that desire to address the committee are subject to the following. The decision to allow a member or members of the public to speak is left to the discretion of the chair. A person may only speak if called upon by the chair. Speakers' time may be limited at the discretion of the chair. The chair may limit the number of speakers. A speaker shall not be disruptive, nor shall the speaker be disrespectful toward the chair, the committee, or others. And except during call to the public, a speaker may only address the specific agenda item then being discussed. The chair may the chair may terminate a person's speaking time for violation of any of the foregoing. We did receive some comments that were emailed to us prior to the meeting. All emails received by this deadline will be distributed to the members of the TAC for their review and consideration, but they will not be read aloud at the meeting. Audience members shall not engage in disruptive behavior during the meeting, including speaking when it is not his or her time to speak. A person may be ejected. Said that, we'll move on to our first item, which is Title VI, Policy and Meeting Procedures. Discussion to be led by Desi Searcher.
CYMPO complies with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Statutes and regulations in all programs and activities. Members of the public may review the CYMPO Title VI plan and submit a self-identification survey by accessing the CYMPO website.
All right, the next item on our agenda is call to the public. This item is to provide an opportunity for presentation of comments by the public on any subject that is not on the agenda. Please complete a request for public input card and submit it to CYMPO staff prior to the beginning of the meeting. When recognized, use the podium and state your name. Speaker's time may be limited at the discretion of the chair. TAC members shall not discuss or take action on matters raised during call to the public. The TAC may direct staff to study the matter or direct that matter be rescheduled for consideration at a later date. Do we have any call to the public?
There were none submitted.
All right, and we'll move on. We're moving right along. We'll move on to item number 4. Consideration and possible action to approve the November 7th, 2023 regular meeting minutes of the Technical Advisory Committee. Any comments?
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the November 7th, 2023 regular meeting.
Second. Motion in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Hear those online? Okay. Item number 5, Executive Director's Update. Vinny Gallegos.
Thank you, Chair and members of the TAC. Just a few brief announcements on my behalf. We don't have an update by the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council. Kevin Adam, we will next month, but I just wanted to let you know, I did send out an email. Hopefully I copied most of you on it. House Bill 2412 is the House bill that is recommending the state of Arizona apportion $400 million to transportation projects throughout rural or greater Arizona. CYMPO is a part of that package. It's based upon population. If successfully apportioned, that $400 million to greater Arizona would go, 33 million of the 400 million would come to our region. Our number one project, as you have recommended onto the executive board and they've approved, is State Route 89 in the town of Chino Valley between roads 3 and 5 north. That would be a $13 million project to provide additional lanes or expansion of that highway. We've been working on that project the last couple of years. We were successful with the 9.9 million to Glassford Hill Road, and this year we've shifted to State Route 89 in the town of Chino Valley. With that said, we've heard a lot of news from not only our local legislators for our district, but others that The economic forecast is not looking promising for the that the state is projecting a $400 million deficit while we're requesting 400 million. So I just want to put that out there that we're not ignorant and naive to the situation, but it does not change that the needs are still existent on the ground. And I say that as the House of Representatives Transportation Committee just heard this bill and they passed the bill. And they vocalized that exact comment, is they acknowledge that, again, the state has some challenges to address with their budget, but they did approve it through the Transportation Committee with a vote of 9-1. It's now going to go on to the Appropriations Committee. So where this is critically important for us up here as staff and those in the audience is that you continue to talk to your legislators as they reprioritize the state budget and they look for areas to regain that 400 million that is projected to be a deficit, that we still advocate for our transportation system. So that's critically important. The other note that I would offer is there are some other House and Senate bills that have been proposed that really should be alarming to all of us in the transportation business. There are some bills that are being proposed that are really anti-bicycle pedestrian transit that I'm not totally sure how much traction they'll ultimately get, but the idea that they're being introduced and the state legislators are wanting a greater focus on highways and roadways, which we understand is a priority, but at the detriment of other things. So I would put that out to the technical committee to be aware of that. If you want more information, I'll send you those bills. I think it's important for you to track and especially to relay that to your mayor, council, your board of supervisors. So with that said, that's really my only update at this time, Chair and members of the TAC. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, seeing no questions, we'll move on to item number 6, the regional transit update. Vinny Gallegos and Michael Lamar.
Thanks, Chair. Members of the TAC, I will punt this over to Mr. Michael Lamar. He'll give the update and he'll have a few others join him.
Do I have to hold it or? Nope. Okay, great. Thank you. I have the privilege of doing the regional transit update and talk about three things that CYMPO is working on as per phase 2 of the transit implementation plan. I'm going to turn it over in just a second to Pedro Rodriguez because he's going to talk a little bit about bringing transit to Prescott starting March 4th for a soft opening with a ribbon cutting in mid-April, sometime in or around Earth Day. He's going to talk about what this looks like from an operational perspective. It will mirror in many ways the system that we had or have right now in Prescott Valley. And then also another note is the discussion at the CYMPO's executive board meeting on February 28th, where we'll go into a great detail about the next few steps in terms of transit and where we're headed. And finally, Leslie Contreras with our office is here, and she is going to show you guys a video introducing the concept of microtransit. And this will be videos indicative of the kind of marketing and promotional materials we're going to be doing going forward as we launch into Prescott. So at this point, Pedro, did you want to go ahead and repeat it?
Thanks, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much. I'll wait here for my slides to pop up, but yeah, we're looking forward to March 4th as our implementation date here in Prescott. That'll be our phase 2 of, do I have to click on something? Sorry. And that'll be our phase 2 of the phase transit plan. So we're very excited for that to happen. So as you saw there, the name of the transportation system, I always like to update people and provide the latest and greatest and just regular information. So the system name is, as you'll see here in a bit, Yavaline Regional Transit System. And we're following the phase transit plan. This is phase 2. So we first started in Prescott Valley. As Michael mentioned, this is going to mimic phase 2 is going to mimic what we've done in Prescott Valley. So of the microtransit zones for phase 3, and then connecting both municipalities in phase 4. So this is a little bit on the what Prescott microtransit zone is going to look like. It's about 3 square miles. As you see here in the blue, it's going to focus on the core, as that is we're going to kind of have a phase within a phase, if you will, kind of a soft start, a growth within Prescott. And we are starting on Monday, March 4th, and this will be, again, a microtransit service. This is a little different than your fixed route or deviated fixed route services, where it is demand-based. So it runs kind of like an Uber, if you will. So as I mentioned, so this is the Yavaline Regional Transit System. The nickname is the Yav Connect. There's a little logo right there on the top right. And then our service is going to be the same as in Prescott Valley, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And here's a little bit of our fleet. I know that there's a lot of questions involved around the topic of the fleet and how big the vehicles are going to be. And as you can see, it's very non-invasive. It's your average vehicle, if you will, of 6 and 9 passenger vans. All of them are wheelchair accessible. They're ramp equipped, all to provide services for people with disabilities. So they're ADA compliant. And we're going to start off with 2 to 3 vehicles here in the zone. And along, as I mentioned before, with the demand aspect of it, or demand driven, is kind of the brains behind the service, which is the software. So right now we are running our service with Via Mobility. It's right now that you can actually download it with this QR code and get the latest Yav Connect app. So this app is going to service both Prescott Valley and Prescott. And that's where people can request their trips, book their trips ahead of time or on demand. And as well as people can call our service number. It's 1-866-YAV-TRAN. Here's just a couple more pictures of what that looks like to give you an idea. So as you can see, it's fairly straightforward. You put your destination in, credit card information, or you can pay on board. That's the other neat part of this, is for those that are unbanked, they can pay on board via cash. So a little bit right there and book your ride. That's what our app looks like. So I'll hand it over to Leslie for some marketing information.
Good afternoon, guys. Let me see if I can fix it. All right, so I have a quick video that I'd like to show today. This is kind of the theme we're going with for our marketing. The first step on our marketing plan is to educate our Prescott area about what microtransit is, and then introduce Yavaline. So we created a small 1-minute video to showcase what microtransit is. So.
Have you heard about microtransit? Microtransit is a new way to get around town. It's a transportation service that uses small vehicles like 9-passenger vans or shuttles to transport people on demand. How does it work? You can book a ride through a mobile app, by phone, or through the website. The driver will pick you up at your designated location. And the driver will drop you off at your desired destination. Few things to know about microtransit. Only book riders are allowed on board. Drivers undergo extensive training and background checks, and vehicles are professionally maintained. Microtransit can be used for your everyday trips like shopping, restaurants, work, or school. transit, connecting people and places.
We had the honor to have him be one of the stars of the video. But so this is kind of what we're trying to introduce, a fun marketing content to Prescott and Prescott Valley to educate them on what it is. We're also going to be very active with the community to let them know that this is coming. So the next 2 weeks are going to look like putting a lot of content on our Facebook and Instagram to push that out. Any questions?
I have some comments.
Yes.
And we've been working with Pedro about last month or two, I think, and being a part of phase 2 with the Yavapai County to give a location in Prescott where his vans can park at our Public Works facility. I believe the town of Prescott Valley has approved their side of that IGA, and it's on the agenda for our Board of Supervisors to consider it next Wednesday, a week from today, on the 21st at the regularly scheduled board meeting. Pedro, I've talked with quite a few board members already. I'm not anticipating any pushback on that. It was just an assistant county manager and clerk, so I'm happy to say that looks like it's full speed ahead. And once we have that and it's all executed, we'll get moving on a few of the little housekeeping items that are necessary to get you guys up and running at our facility. I hope that we can attain that March 4th opening date for you, but I can't speak for other departments like our facilities department as to what their capabilities are in getting like your charging stations for your tablets and things like that for your navigation. So, but things are going well, I would say.
Yeah. Thank you for that update. That's excellent. And as mentioned to you before, we have certain processes in place to allow us, to give a little bit more time to the county to be able to start. So I think we should be in good
Sounds good
hands.
to me.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. That's all, Chair.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment. At yesterday's council meeting, we had a presentation by, and I apologize if I get the name wrong, but I believe it was the Navajo Apache tribe. Yavapai Apache. City of Prescott, their new transit system that's going to be going online on March the 18th. That transit will run from Cordes Junction through Dewey, Humboldt, up into Prescott Valley, and eventually into Prescott, and then it will reverse back the other direction every single day. And they were emphatic that their services are not limited only to tribal members, that it was for the use of the community. So I'm really excited to hear that we have different kinds of transit options becoming available for people in this area. And any way that we can work to coordinate those programs, I think we should be looking at how we can maximize all the programs that are out there right now. So that's all I have. Did you have any?
If I can add something too. Chair and members of the TAC, thank you. And just for the record, we did receive a comment from JD Greenberg. She doesn't wish to speak, but she did ask a question. How will Yavaline interface with the new Yavapai Apache transit, of which the chair was just speaking about? And absolutely, in the spirit of what you just said, Gwen, that is CYMPO's primary role, is how do we facilitate and coordinate true regional transit? If I can just briefly recap one of our items at the annual strategic CYMPO retreat. This was an item that I walked you and the board through. We are looking to transition Yavaline from the town of Prescott Valley under the umbrella of CYMPO, which will help facilitate that exact point. So to answer JD's question, how do we plan on doing that? We plan on interacting with the leadership of the Yavapai Apache tribe. We'll have Yavaline under our management, and we're working closely with YRT. One of the items you have later on the agenda is an amendment to our work program that will show Pedro Rodriguez as an employee of the CYMPO organization. So with your recommendation later on, that'll go on to the executive board, and on the 28th, then over these next few months, staff will be working to more formalize that system within the CYMPO organization. I would call that, if you will, step one, and then the Yavapai Apache tribe and YRT, if you will, are steps 2 and 3 that we're going to be doing exactly what you said, Chair, of bringing these together and serving the greater public. So thank you.
Right, seeing no further comment, we'll move on to item number 7, the SR 69 corridor master plan update. Presenters Bryn Stoller with CYMPO and Vamshi Yelsetti with Kittleson and Associates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the TAC, good to be here today. I'm going to provide an introduction to a presentation on the SR 69 corridor master plan. The corridor master plan planning process kicked off about a year ago. It's very heavy in data gathering and analysis and traffic modeling, so a good part of the first year has gone into those activities. And our consultant team at Kittleson and Associates, you mentioned Vamshi, is here to make the presentation. Also, Phyllis Davis works with us on public engagement with this plan, are here with us today to give you a more detailed download, because I've been giving you updates on this planning process throughout the last year, basically just keeping you abreast of how the data collection has been going. So we're anxious to hear what Vamshi's got to bring to us. And it's a 17.4 mile corridor. There are 9 segments that have been identified for prioritized improvements. And this plan is instrumental in continuing to refine improvement options on SR 69. Also important to note that this is an ADOT facility. There are portions of this roadway that are have assigned maintenance to various jurisdictions, but the majority of the 17.4 mile corridor is under the care and control of ADOT. So anything that CYMPO can bring to partnering with ADOT and the jurisdictions involved in improvements to SR 69, we've demonstrated that over the course of the last 20 years. As most folks are aware in the room, we've got a 1 mile segment of SR 69 that is poised to be improved. That is about from Frontier Village to Prescott Lakes Parkway approximately. It's taken about 11 years now and a cost of $12 million to secure an improvement of 1 mile additional lane capacity. So it is an arduous process to improve state routes, and it's a huge collaboration. And I hope that the introduction to the data portion of this planning process is helpful to you all in your jurisdictional planning. This will definitely bring regional benefit. So we look forward to sharing the rest of the planning process with you. Also, we have a brand new survey link. We have a live, oops, hold on. Desi, is my snip with you? Pardon me. Sorry, coordination. On our website, cympo.org, there is an SR 69 page that is currently live, and we are promoting the survey, which is to hear from the community. What parts of Highway 69 are difficult for you? Anecdotal information and crowdsourced information is very important to these processes as well. So as the public engagement portion of this gets underway, we're interested in hearing from folks. So please help us in pushing out the survey link, and we'll be sending communications to the stakeholder list as well to start that process. So with that, I'll turn it over to Vamshi.
Madam Chair, members of the TAC, I'm so glad to be here today to provide our first major update for the State Route 69 corridor master plan. Let's see. Just to bring you all up to speed, we started this project with the goal of coming together with one common long-term vision for the corridor on what State Route 69 could look like, in terms of the ultimate corridor vision, what that would need to look like. And as part of that, we would be evaluating a lot of improvement options to make sure that we don't miss anything, and then come up at the end of the day with a set of realistic improvements that are feasible along that corridor. That being said, there may be sections where we probably can't do anything, but it's something that we'll bring to light if that is the case. But we will be looking at every possible option along the corridor to make sure that we evaluate whether it's feasible, it's not feasible, from a both construction standpoint and cost feasibility standpoint as well. Okay. And then at the end of the day, we'll provide CYMPO with a phased improvement plan that kind of lays out, in terms of what can you do within the short term, what can you do within the midterm, and then what can you do in the long term. So that's the way we would come up with a phased improvement plan for the corridor. We're doing this in 4 different phases. So phase 1 is, Bryn mentioned, it's a lot of the data gathering and analysis phase. This is where we spend most of our time to date. So we are pretty close to wrapping up this phase. We are making sure that all our analysis is up to snuff. And we looked at the corridor from a multimodal perspective, not just vehicles. So we did a whole inventory of the corridor, like Bryn said, from the 17.4 miles that starts in Dewey Humboldt and then up until 89 in Prescott. And then we did a traffic analysis for the entire corridor as well. As we went through the process, we realized that the traffic data was outdated, and because a lot of the information was probably influenced by COVID travel patterns. So we kind of went back to the drawing board to revise traffic counts and then redid all the traffic analysis to make sure that we feel confident in the results that we're going to be providing. Okay. We're in phase 2. We're kind of straddling between phase 1 and phase 2 right now. We have a lot of information from phase 1 that we started phase 2 as well, where we're starting to look at what can we do along 69 based on the current issues that we've identified to date. And then again, that'll continue evolving over the next few months. And phase 3 is where we will start looking at different improvement scenarios and then kind of group them in different set of improvements and then group them into different scenarios. And then do a detailed evaluation of what set of projects can be combined together to get the best bang for our buck, and will that be feasible? And then we will also make sure that we do a fatal flaw review in terms of environmental and physical constraints, that some of the improvements that we recommend for that preferred scenario that we'll end up with are actually feasible from a construction standpoint. And then at the end of the day, you'll have a action plan that, as I mentioned, would be a phased set of improvements that'll provide some guidance on how to carry the plan forward once we're finished. As part of this, we also have, as been mentioned, 2 phases of community engagement. So the phase 1 just kicked off. So this is more, we just put a survey and an interactive map online where the public and stakeholders can fill out a quick survey telling us what issues they experience along the corridor, and then what ideas they have for improvements along the corridor. And then for them to be able to provide some very specific, location-specific feedback, we also have an interactive map that's live, that they can add pins along the corridor on a map and then provide specific feedback. Community engagement phase 2 would start in spring once we have a good set of alternatives, set of improvements identified. As Bryn mentioned, the corridor is 17.4 miles long. It's pretty diverse from segment to segment. So to be able to capture, to be able to make sure that we're looking at each area from a localized perspective plus a regional perspective, we ended up splitting the entire corridor into 9 different segments. And the way we split these segments is we looked at the land use characteristics along the corridor. We looked at travel patterns along the corridor, where people are coming, where people are going. And then we also looked at major activity centers along the corridor, as well as what are the major intersections where it would make logical sense to break those segments up. So as I mentioned, we ended up with 9 segments. Again, I'm not going to go through every segment in the interest of time, but through the presentation, next few slides, I'll touch on a few segments on what we've kind of identified initially. And just wanted to bring a regional perspective to this corridor. I'm preaching to the choir, I know, but 69's one of probably the only corridors that connects three different communities and the county. And there is an alternative route from Fain Road 89A to 89, but 69 still is the predominant corridor that serves that provides access to a lot of the activity centers that are regional in nature and are located along State Route 69. So for the next few slides, I'm going to summarize, provide a snapshot of the existing conditions assessment in three different aspects. One is kind of reviewing the land use and development characteristics along the corridor. And then I'll talk a little bit about the travel patterns in terms of like where people are actually, who's actually using 69 and where they're coming from and where they're going, and why are they going. And then I'll end with, summarizing a lot of the roadway inventory along 69, along with some of the initial analysis results. Okay. So corridor socioeconomic conditions, as you can see, it's pretty diverse. There's high density areas up in the Prescott and Prescott Valley area, and then some other areas as well along the corridor segment 4 and 8. But a big chunk of the corridor, again, is kind of rural in nature or doesn't have much development along. But where there is, it's pretty concentrated. Looked at the land use characteristics along the corridor as well. Again, depending on the land use, how people use the corridor kind of varies. So again, no surprise here, there's a lot of commercial uses in Prescott Valley along that front 69, and then same thing in the Prescott area along the Prescott Mall and on the west side. The key thing I do want to bring up, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is this seems like any other corridor, but if you look at the number of key activity centers that are located along this corridor, Yavapai College, Prescott Resort, Frontier Village, Prescott Gateway Mall, the Costco, Crossroads Shopping Center, and then the Yavapai Regional Medical Center. All of these are, they're not just serving people who drive that corridor. These are regional activity centers, so people from throughout the region are accessing these corridors. So that's why 69 is super important. We looked at with the next couple slides, I'll want to shed some light on how people are using 69, where they're coming from in terms of origins and where they're going in terms of destinations. So before I do that, I just wanted to provide some, snapshot of what the traffic volumes look like so you can relate the OD results a little bit better. So as you can see, segments 1 and 2, which is essentially from 89 on the west to about Prescott Lakes Parkway, traffic volumes vary around from 20 to 30,000. And then the busiest segments, one of the busiest segments is between Prescott Lakes Parkway and Walker Road. That's where you have the Prescott Gateway Mall and Costco and as well. And that segment carries well over 40,000 vehicles a day. And then the section east of Walker Road all the way up to the Prescott Valley western city limits. Again, that segment is about 30 to 40,000. And then east of that segment within Prescott Valley, again, is about 30 to 40,000. As you go west, as you go east to east of Navajo, and then that's when the traffic volumes start to drop and go down to about 20 to 30, and then further down east of Dewey Humboldt to about 19 to 20,000 vehicles per day. Okay. Again, as we look forward to what kind of improvements do we need do we need to do everything on 69? Do we need to do some things on adjacent roads? That's kind of, that's the way we want to make sure that we solve the problems on 69. So just merely addressing 69 may not help us get there. So we wanted to really focus on, do a very detailed analysis on where people are coming and where they're going. So we did this for all the 9 segments, but in the interest of time, I'll focus on 3 different segments. So the one is to the west end by Prescott. So for this segment goes from 89 to Yavapai Connector. And as you can see on the top slide, for the folks who are going eastbound on this segment, 53% of that traffic is coming from the West Prescott area. That's to the west of 89. And then where are they going? Most of that traffic is going towards Prescott Valley, to the North Prescott Valley, which is about 34%, and then south of 69, Prescott Valley, that's 13%. Another key metric here to look at is the amount of traffic that is regional in nature and that goes towards Phoenix is about 10%, not about 9 to 10%. So there's a significant percentage of traffic that's regional, but there's also a significant amount of traffic that's serving local needs as well. At the same location, if you were to look at westbound traffic, again, the pattern essentially flips. So from the Phoenix metro area, the traffic coming to using that segment is about 9% again. But again, a lot of the Prescott Valley folks are heading towards Prescott, and that's about 36%. I mean, over the years, we've known these trends, but we've kind of never had a sense of like how much is the traffic that really where they're coming and where they're going. So that was the point of this exercise, to really understand, what corridors do we need to improve and where we need to improve them. And is it just 69 or is it the adjacent corridor, the crossing streets as well, that we need to pay focus on to make sure we improve them? So,
Vamshi?
Sure.
How did you determine those?
So we used Replica is a big data platform. So that database provides access to use the cell phone data and other data sources to basically really determine, why people are making the trips, where their origin is, and where their destination is. So we use that data, and we basically divided up the region along the corridor into 7 or 8 different zones. Then within each zone, we try to group all the trips and then see where they went. So that's kind of how we use Replica. So this, again, we didn't have this level of technology and data before. So this helped us really hone in on, where they're coming and where they're going. So
Appreciate the clarification. I think it was important to touch on for the public. So thank you.
The second one I want to touch on is segment number 3. So this is, again, one of the busiest segments by the Prescott Gateway Mall and the Costco area. So this goes between Prescott Valley Parkway and the Walker Road intersection. Again, as you can see, still, as you're moving towards the east side of the corridor, there's still a significant chunk of trips that are originating in the West Prescott area. That is about 45%. And they still seem to be headed towards Prescott Valley. That's about 37%. So again, what this is indicating is these are long distance trips. People are going from, all along 69. A significant chunk is going, that's making that long trip from Prescott to Prescott Valley. Again, that Phoenix, amount of trips going towards Phoenix seem to stay consistent within 8 to 9% throughout the corridor as well. Segment 5 is just west of Prescott Valley city limits. So this is from, I believe, Prescott East Highway to Sundog Ranch Road. Again, if you see here, the people using this segment, 29% are coming from the West Prescott area, the area just west of 89. Again, that's a pretty long distance away, but people are still making that trip, that 30%. And then again, from that segment, 58% are going to Prescott Valley, and 17% are going to South 69. If you go westbound travel, again, the pattern essentially flips. So a lot of the people using that number 5 segment are coming from Prescott Valley. and then they're headed towards the West Prescott area, about 30%. Okay. So once we did the OD analysis, we also wanted to make sure what the traffic analysis is saying in terms of today's traffic. So we did an inventory of all the traffic control along 69, and there's about 26 traffic signals. And as you can see, segment 2, which is east of Yavpai connector, has 4 signals within 2/3 of a mile. And then segments 5 and 6 have 7 signals within 2.2 miles. Again, the reason why we highlighted these facts is that the closer the signals are, it affects the performance of the corridor itself. And we could be looking at some technology improvements that are targeted just for these segments that are closer, where the signals are denser between each segment. So those could be like the low-hanging fruit where we don't need to essentially look at widening right away, but we could do some technology-related improvements that would help solve some of the issues. Sorry, one other thing I wanted to highlight here is that when we did the analysis, surprisingly, when you look at the overall intersection performance, it shows that most of the intersections are working well. But when you dig a little deeper into the analysis itself, well, intersection overall might be working well, but there are some approaches, the left turns and the certain through movements are experiencing significant delays. So that's the experience that people remember. So I just wanted to bring that up that, even though on face value, it looks like intersections are working well, but there are several turn movements that are not working well. Okay. And another thing on the signals is that several signals have very long cycle lengths. So especially for the cross reads, people seem to experience significant delays. So those are some areas that we could look at, improving pretty easily. Also, as I mentioned, we did the inventory of the corridor. We captured the number of lanes in each direction, the medians as well. Again, as you can see, it's not consistent. It keeps changing from one segment, from 6 lanes to 5 lanes to 4 lanes to 6 lanes. So it just varies significantly. What happens then is, as you're going from 6 lanes to 5 lanes or 4 lanes, they just become choke points and then add to the problem. So our goal is to look at this even more carefully to identify, bringing consistency for certain segments, what would that look like, and then will that improve the situation? Again, medians is another aspect, as you can see in that map. There's several types of medians throughout that corridor, and again, they're all inconsistent as well. So bringing some level of consistency for the medians throughout the corridor, focusing on some segments, making the medians very consistent kind of improves the overall traffic flow. Again, low-hanging fruit that we could do to, buy some time while, waiting for the growth to happen and traffic volumes to increase further. Again, we also looked at from a truck standpoint, typically we look at whether the corridor is considered reliable from a travel time perspective for trucks. There's a pretty big chunk of the corridor that, trucks consider that this segment is not reliable from a travel time standpoint, meaning that if it should take you 10 minutes, it takes you, 20 minutes, and it's not consistent. So that's what travel time reliability means. And from a truck standpoint, it's kind of classified as corridor segments. Some of them are classified as unreliable. Okay. We also looked at safety data. A lot of the safety data came from, the NACOG, CYMPO, and Metroplan safety plan. Again, here along this corridor, our focus was along this corridor. We looked at the 5-year crash data. There's 12 fatal crashes. 4 that were bike and ped, and then 45 were serious injury crashes. And that study that I mentioned, the safety plan, has identified, two segments as high crash segments, which is basically the Prescott East Highway to Robert Road and then Prescott Lakes Parkway to Walker Road. And these kind of coincide with the traffic volume data as well. These are the two most busiest segments along the corridor as well.
Chairperson, if I can, please. Vamshi, we had two comment cards come in that I think this would probably be the most appropriate time to ask. One was from JD, who did not wish to speak, and one was from Joanne, who did wish, but they were both on the same point, and maybe you can address them. This is as it relates to wildlife characteristics in the corridor. I know historically staff has tracked through the safety part of it. Anytime there's any type of crashes or fatalities as it relates to wildlife in the corridor, but could you speak to that from the safety standpoint, and is the planning process looking at any wildlife characteristics in the corridor?
Yes, that is a fatal flaw review that we will be looking at in terms of making sure that we are addressing environmental concerns as we move forward. So we'll be looking at the wildlife corridors to make sure that they're not getting obstructed, and then the preferred alternative set of improvements that we will look at will address both safety as well as making sure that from an environmentally they are sensitive to the environmental concerns as well.
Thank you.
Again, as I mentioned, we are looking at the corridor from a multimodal perspective. So we did an inventory of all the pedestrian and bicycle facilities along the corridor. While the map makes it look like there are a pretty good amount of walking and biking facilities, along the corridor, providing access to the activity centers on either side. What's misleading is they're not fully connected. So just closing some of the gaps could make closing some of the gaps like in sidewalks or the shared use path or the bike facilities would bring about a huge difference in the way people would actually start using these for walking and biking. So as we look at the final footprint for 69, we will also be looking at what can we accommodate in terms of sidewalk, shared use paths, and biking facilities as well. So that is, a quick summary of our progress to date. We are wrapping up working paper 1, essentially summarizing all the existing conditions analysis. Then we just started our future conditions analysis as well. And as part of this, we will be doing a lot of future analysis modeling to determine no-build scenario, and then we'll start looking at what kind of improvements will start to make a difference to address some of the issues. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned, we'll be developing an action plan that comes up with a short, mid, and long set of improvements that CYMPO can champion after the project's finished. I do want to do a quick shout out for the community engagement that just kicked off. There are some comment cards on the sign-in table over there. So folks can use their phone to scan the QR code, and that'll take them to the survey website. And then after they fill out the survey, it'll take them to an interactive map where they can provide location-specific feedback as well. Okay. With that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Vamshi. That was a nice synopsis of what you guys have been up to. I admit I've been wondering how it's going. So clearly you've gone through a lot and looked at a lot of the data already. So that's very much appreciated. And I'm looking at the website for CYMPO right now. For those that get home and they're like, I forgot to do the QR code. Just go to the CYMPO website, and right at the top it says State Route 69 plan, and right at the top of that page you click on has the link for it. So encourage it, share it with your friends, and we're all looking for public feedback on this as much as possible. I know that this is a project that, along with the Sundog Connector project, has garnered a lot of public interest. So now's your chance, people. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Real quick, Chair and members of the TAC and Vamshi, and again, lots of work still to do. We acknowledge, we appreciate Vamshi and his team, starting to look at the early analysis, and don't mean to put you on the spot here, Vamshi, but I think as we segue into the next item, this is important. A lot of the comments that have been documented and received for those that are opposed to Sundog are really pointing to this particular project as a priority. And we've heard that, and we're glad that this study is moving along. I will say that you and I have had a couple probably more detailed data analysis, and as you look at this whole corridor, and again, we still have process to go through, but those segments of the corridor that appear to be probably rising to the top, if you will, are more in the town of Prescott Valley part of 69. So I think that's going to be important when we segue into this next conversation and we look at more improvements on Highway 69. But if you would just speak to that again, as you start looking at these different segments, what you and I have seen is really that Prescott Valley segment within the town of Prescott Valley, kind of that Glassford to, I guess, Robert Road of probably greater need out of this whole corridor. Is that a fair point?
Yes, two segments really stand out based on our analysis to date. One is the segment that you mentioned, Vinny, within the Prescott Valley area. And the other segment is towards that, the Costco and the Gateway Mall area as well. That stands out. That, Brent mentioned that project, that does show up as a significant need, and that project's moving forward. So.
Thank you. I think that's helpful as we move into the next item. So thank you, Vamshi. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 8, review, discussion, and possible action to receive the Sundog Connector Design Concept Report and Environmental Overview Final Report. Presenters Vincent Gallegos and Bryn Stotler with CYMPO and Matt Bondi with AECOM.
Thank you, Chair, members of the TAC. So I was looking back over some of our timeline, and we've throughout the time of this project, we've hit on quite a few different timelines, but for this design concept report in particular, I would like to make a note that we're coming up on the 3-year mark of CYMPO being actively involved in this particular phase of the planning. We've given presentations before that, again, will acknowledge the 26-year part of the conversation. But for today's purposes, since what the item on the agenda is the design concept report, just to go back just briefly over the last 3 years, from about March of 2021 till about August, September, that was the CYMPO staff working directly with the city of Prescott, mayor as the representative of CYMPO, and working directly with staff. And it's important to understand that that's where the conversation, at least for this design concept report, started, with the mayor's guidance, with his representation of on the CYMPO board. At that time, Michael Lamar, who works for CYMPO now, was the city manager. We were working directly with him and his staff, and that included Prescott Fire, Prescott Police, Public Works with Craig Dotseth, Bryn in her former role of the Community Development Director. All of that, what I would consider preliminary work, was to ensure that the city of Prescott was in the driver's seat, was giving us a green light if that was the desire of the city of Prescott and the region. Based upon that then rose to the CYMPO, to the TAC, and to the executive board at our strategic planning retreat. So it was, I believe, August or September of 21 as to when the discussion was to begin looking at the major planning projects for the next 5 years. And it was determined at that point that we would go ahead and follow up with the 2013 study that the city of Prescott did. And I think this is an important note. We've been given credit at times, or whatever you want to call it, that the 2013 was the CYMPO study, and it's important to note that that is a city of Prescott Sundog study. I believe they were able to get grant funds from the state to do that study, but CYMPO did not drive that. We were invited to participate in it, but it was the recommendation of that 2013 study that the next step would be a design concept report, of which 10 years later, that's where we are at today, is picking that up. So looking at that, we were then able to kick this project off in May of 2022 after we went through the tax recommendation, the executive board, and we were able to hire AECOM, who's with us today and has been with us these last couple of years to go through this process. But it's important to note, again, planning process, design concept report, environmental overview. We've had a number of staff changes in that 3 years, as I described. The city staff that we started with, in an ironic way, has transitioned out of the city of Prescott and has joined the CYMPO staff. So I was looking at them across the table, and now they're with CYMPO. So just things like that. And why that's significant and important is because that's also changed at times the management, the flow of the project. And I appreciate everyone's patience in all of those changes, as we've had several project managers to really end up on the home stretch here with Brent and I, carrying it through to the final end. As we go through this today, and I think this has already been reported through the media and in a number of probably email responses, the intent of today's action is to allow Matt and Kate Bondi to lead you through a detailed presentation of the design concept report. The action that is available to the TAC is to consider receiving of the design concept report and environmental overview with any noted changes. But it should be made clear, again, as I've attempted to communicate, that as far as this body is concerned of a CYMPO regional organization, it's really receiving of the document. And then even though the cities and the town and the county have a particular role on CYMPO, it'll be up to those local jurisdictions to ultimately decide if there's any desire to move forward. And looking at the priorities that City of Prescott is facing and other municipalities, I just don't see this as a viable project to go beyond the planning phase at this time. The other thing that we've noted throughout the process is there is no funding available for the construction of this project. So I think those two things, if you look at what are the next steps, which I know of probably of most interest to the greater public, is CYMPO would evaluate what is the political will and where is the money at, and neither of those exist for this project to have any life beyond these presentations this month, in my opinion. And again, I will reiterate that with the executive board and be receptive to their direction and guidance. So as we go through this, we'll invite Bryn up to introduce the AECOM team and any other notes that I may have overlooked in that, but just wanted to give a brief overview as to what we're going to spend some time doing. Bryn.
Thanks, Vinny. Chair Rowich and members of the TAC, I know that Vinny has provided a very comprehensive history of the project, and I entered back onto the CYMPO team and the project itself mid-project. So we have definitely worked collaboratively with AECOM every step of the way. We appreciate working with Matt and Kate Bondi. Some of the best traffic engineering that happens in our state comes out of their AECOM team. And so we've really got a capable team to deliver this plan. And we're proud of the efforts that we've made to communicate with the public, with our elected officials, and with you all in the technical realm to ensure that this product is the best plan that we could deliver under the circumstances, and we do appreciate that. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Matt Bondi. He's going to start off the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bryn. Thank you, Vinny, Chair Rowich, committee members. Again, my name is Matt Bondi. I am the project manager with AECOM. We will present here today on kind of what we talked about, talking about the DCR and environmental overview process for the Sundog Connector project and kind of go through where we started and where we're at today with the DCR and the environmental overview submitted. See if it can be received and just kind of talk about that process from beginning to end, how we got here today. So I'm going to pull it up on the screen real fast. Okay, see it. All right, everyone. So again, the Sundog Connector design concept report and environmental overview. We prepared a presentation here. If we kind of want to talk about some of the things beginning to end, what we want to discuss today, where we're at, where we are today. So we'll go over that project summary and process. We'll talk about some of the project goals and needs that initiated the DCR and the environmental overview for it. We'll go through the alternatives evaluation processes, the phases we went through for that, how we came up with some of the alternatives, how we identified what some of those recommended are, and how we evaluated them overall. We'll talk about the build key features on some of the recommendations from the DCR. We'll talk about that environmental overview, and then we'll also get into the public open houses and the general feedback. So kind of a robust public involvement process with this one here. We'll talk about what those activities were, what those events were, and some of the results of those dates. Then overall, we'll talk about the DCR recommendation and the overall next steps, and then any questions associated with it there. So a summary of the project here. So again, this is this would be a potential new east-west corridor, approximately 3.5 miles in length, that would connect Prescott and Prescott Valley. It would connect Prescott Lakes Parkway south of SR 89. So at the existing roundabout located along Prescott Lakes Parkway. They would then meet up on the east end at SR 69 at the existing connection there of Sundog Ranch Road. This would provide a secondary travel option to SR 69, and it would also enhance connectivity for the neighborhoods between Prescott and Prescott Valley. When we looked at the process for this project here, we broke it into 4 different phases. So we started with a phase 1, which was looking at our existing and future conditions. We then moved that into our phase 2, where we came up with our different alternatives and evaluated each of those alternatives to determine what build type alternatives would make sense for the region, could be moved forward for further evaluation. After we moved out of phase 2, it was into phase 3, where the actual presentation or the preparation of the DCR and the environmental overview. And then it takes us into phase 4, which is here today, the presentation of the plan. So, and as you can see within that timeline there, it kicked off the project somewhere around that April of 2022 timeframe. There were then numerous stakeholder workshops, open houses, different public opportunities and engagement opportunities to then garner data to be used for the different phases of the report and the environmental overview. Another, just looking at the project process a little bit, another from the perspective here at the very top of the chart here, we're showing that document review. So kind of our phase 1, looking at those existing conditions. The way that we were then set up when we moved into our phase 2, our alternatives development and evaluation. We initially looked at 7 different build alternatives, which we called our phase 1, only looking at build alternatives within that phase. So we started with 7 build alternatives. We evaluated them. We used different input from public technical team members, all the different areas there to come up with the alternatives, evaluate them, screen them, and then come down into a phase 2 where we had 2 build alternatives versus the overall no build alternative as well. So we moved out of that into phase 2 with an overall recommended build alternative and a no-build alternative. So that's just a little oversight on how some of the development went there. Overall goals and needs of the project. So why were we looking at this project here? So addressing congestion on SR 69. So traffic congestion on SR 69 between Prescott and Prescott Valley is a congested roadway, which will just continue to grow. And as we've touched on here, the Sundown Connector could provide an additional east-west route to alleviate some of that congestion on SR 69. It would also improve emergency response and evacuation access. So currently, the existing development or the existing communities out there, Diamond Valley, Yavapai Hills, access is only along the SR 69 connection points there. And an additional east-west roadway to the north would provide alternate access into those communities and help to improve those response and evacuation routes. Would provide additional access to homes north of SR 69. So again, a route to the north would provide access to those existing communities, and it would also provide new connectivity and access to approved developments. So some of the planned communities and developments within this areas, it would match some of those proposed plans. It would give us an opportunity to plan for those corridors based on what is already, or what has, to the best of everyone's knowledge, been planned within those corridors. Find those connection points, give an opportunity to shape the corridor within those different limit areas. Okay, plan developments and the regional park. So we're just looking at a map here, a little bit of the existing study area here. So it's kind of outlined by the dashed area around it there. You can see some of the different areas within there, Yavapai Hills, Diamond Valley on the south end as those existing development areas there. You can see some of the proposed development areas of Storm Ranch on the west end of the project, Yavapai Hills Unit 9 kind of a little bit there east to Storm Ranch. Some of the darker blue area is some area that is also some Arizona state land, but has also been per some of the discussions on some of the IGA and some of the acquisitions within here, designated as regional park area within the region there. So these are just some of the features that were taken into consideration as we looked at the existing areas in a whole and how some build and no build alternatives could fit within the area. So when we start talking about some of the proposed build alternatives that we could look at, and I'm going to turn it over to Kate here in a second, but we talked about some of the tiered approach as we developed some of the build alternatives. As those build alternatives were developed, we then went into a process where we evaluated each of the alternatives based on determine different evaluation criteria categories. So you can see the 11 or so categories that we have on the screen here. As we went through each of these different phases, each of these categories were used then to score, rank, and eventually come up with alternatives that were highest scoring and that could be moved forward to future considerations as we moved ourselves through the process. So looking at different items such as the natural environment, the built environment, traffic, accessibility, emergency, and access evacuation, multimodal, vehicular safety, and any of the engineering or just design constraints, costs, and overall public and stakeholder acceptance for it there. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kate to discuss some of the actual alternatives and how we move through some of that process there.
Thank you, Matt. So as Matt mentioned, we started with 7 alternatives. There are a couple things that I do want to note that were on the last slide when we talked about the planned improvements and the planned developments and the planned proposed park. So those were all considered, as Matt said. One thing to note, at the time we started it, Storm Ranch and the extension of Yavapai Hills has either final plats or preliminary plats. And so, as Matt mentioned, these alternatives utilize those roadways and those planned roadways that they had for the corridor is like key locations of where we're trying to connect to. At the beginning of the project, as Vinny said, you know, some of those developments were moving forward. One of the key things of the DCR was to see what does it look like? How can they connect? And what does it look like in the future if those developments ever do move forward? And so one of the key items you see on the far western side is the 7 alternatives picked up where Storm Ranch within the towards the eastern edge of Storm Ranch, because that had final plans at the time that we started this project and within this project. And so that area to the west, to the roundabout, that in all alternatives and as we moved forward stayed the same as far as where they connected and how it went through that community. As we move, you can see what our basic thing that we tried to do is try to really look at how can we connect. We kind of looked at the western end in between Storm Ranch and Yavapai Hills, and then the eastern end. And you can see the western end, we're trying to get up a ridge. So how do we get up to where it is in Yavapai Hills, the extension area? And so that we have to get up and over. You can see we tried many different ways and different alignments to get through there to see, because we're, you know, there's topographic features. So we're trying to figure out what is the best horizontal and vertical alignment to get through that area. Do we cut it? Do we fill it? What does that look like? And what is the most feasible thing to go in there? And then on the western end, or eastern end, we're trying to balance a couple things. One is, how do we bisect? We know that there's wildlife in this area. What, you know, challenge of like kind of looking at what happens if we go to the north, what happens if we go in the middle, which you can kind of see an orange line, and then we have on the southern ends, which balancing how close do we get to the existing homes, how, you know, the existing, how close do we get to the existing communities on the southern end, both Diamond Valley and Yavapai Hills that exist already. Versus, you know, as we move further away, there's more topography, there's more features of that nature, and we also possibly bisect more some of those wildlife communities. So really looking at each of the different alternatives here, we're trying to get an array of, you know, addressing each of those concerns. Go to the next slide. We then took those 7 alternatives and did the evaluation. Not going to go through every single detail on this. We did a lot of math, a lot of quantitative. As Matt mentioned, we have environmental, we have really a lot of the concerns and a lot of those criteria came from what we heard from the stakeholders, what we heard from the public were key, and what really would drive it. And so as you can see, alternative 1 and alternative 2 really fell out, and you can see the red or that orange color is really poor performing. And then the best ones, as you can see, are kind of in the blue. And so alternative 3 and alternative 7 are the 2 build alternatives that moved forward. Again, phase 1 was just trying to look at, if we build this, where is the most optimal position for it? Alternative 3 is an alternative that connects all the way through. So of the 7 alternatives, we did have 1 alternative, which is alternative 7, that only went to the eastern end of Yavapai Hills. So it doesn't connect all the way through, but it did, but it would provide that connection to Prescott Lakes Parkway. So alternative 3 and alternative 7 were the alternatives that were recommended to move on to phase 2. So in that phase 2, when we first started going into that phase, we then took a step back and, you know, met with some of the technical team and said, okay, what should the actual typical section look like? And based on traffic volumes, working with Vamshi and making sure, just another thing to note, our SR69 team and the Sundog team are working hand in hand the whole time. And so looking at, when we build this, what would that look like, or end of traffic volumes? And so we have a 4-lane section that we put through on the phase 2, and we are providing a 10-foot multi-use sidewalk pathway on the sidewalk on the north side, and then a 6-foot sidewalk on the south side. To be conservative with this approach on all alternatives, we used cut slopes and fill slopes. You'll see them on both sides. We did a max cut of a 2 to 1, or sorry, 1.5 to 1 and a max fill of a 2 to 1 fill. So what that means is we didn't consider in anything of should we use guardrail on some of the fills and steepen up those slopes so that we don't go out as much. We did not consider using walls on some of the cuts to see, well, can we, not go out as far? So we just treated them all the same. And so to be conservative, that's something that all the build alternatives have, including in the plans where we show the right of way. We've used this approach through the whole area. If it ever did move on to further design, that's something that would be looked at that time. So when we went on to this alternative 3, the other thing we did was we looked at the horizontal alignment and vertical. We tightened those up. We went into a little bit more depth. We knew that we tried to pull it away from those existing homes in Yavapai Hills and Diamond Valley as much as we thought we could, while still getting the benefit of putting it to the south. So the benefit of putting it to the south that you'll see in the plan is the vertical. So the vertical, we're able to vertically stay a lot more within the existing topography and follow it more easily with meeting grades and desirable and minimum grades. And that is on the southern side, but yet we tried to push it away from those existing backyards as much as we possibly could. So that was a part of this refinement. The other part of the refinement you can see is the connections. Where do we connect? Where could those connection points be into the communities that are existing today? So the Yavapai Hills community, that follows the kind of plats that we've seen. And even if you look at an aerial where they kind of have the grading already done for south of it, is following those 2 lines. So that's where we are showing those connections. With Diamond Valley, we kind of evaluated where would it make the most sense to go into there. And that is actually one of the existing, there's a dirt road that comes out of there. And it seemed like it really connected the 2 sides of that community and an easy way to get out. And then it could be extended to the north to provide access to the utilities that are north of there. So that's the refinements on alternative 3. On alternative 7, we did similar refinements, but really centered on alternative 7 on the connections in Yavapai Hills itself with those same connections. And then the no build is the no build. It is a no build, and the way we're evaluating it is a no build of the whole corridor that is not taking into account. This is just if those communities didn't move forward either, which we have no control of in the evaluation, what would it score in the different scoring? So phase 2 evaluation. So we have the phase 2 alternatives with alternative 3, 7, and no build. We have all those evaluation criteria. One other thing you see on here, and I forgot to mention in the last one, is the weight. So how we came up with that weight was through interactive activities with the stakeholders, which included members of the community, members of different agencies. Each of the towns and cities were represented in there. So from that, we did activities in our stakeholder 2 workshop, and that's where we came up and had them kind of rank what would be more important, cost versus multimodal, and, did a lot of that. So again, all of those activities that we did within the public and the stakeholder engagement were directly input into the evaluation and the process that we went through. So as you can see from there, some of the most important criteria were the safety, the emergency access, the traffic impacts, and the environment. Those were probably the ones that came up at the high. The lowest ones were consistency with plans and the cost, which is kind of interesting. We don't always see that, but that's how that came out from a weighting perspective. From this, you see from the build alternatives, alternative 3 ranks the best out of the 2 build alternatives, and the no build alternative ranks the best for the no build. So one thing to note, you can kind of see with the blue, you'll see the blue is really predominant on the environment, on the no build, and on, the engineering and the cost and the public. We'll get into that later, but on the public and public acceptance, that's because we're not having impacts to those things. We're not impacting the environment. We don't have costs. That's why those score well for that. The middle whole section, that's the area where we identified the needs. If you do this project, those are where we're going to address the needs. And that's why with a build alternative, alternative 3 came out as the higher ranking of the build alternatives. Those are the part where the no build doesn't address those, but the build does. So that's really the difference between the two. And again, alternative 3 is the recommended build. If it's built, this is information and where it's most likely feasible to go. So alternative 3, the opportunities. So we're going to go through each of the 2 that were recommended and the opportunities and the constraints. So it most meets those future and existing regional needs, provides the largest reduction in travel times and volumes on SR 69, which I'll get into in a little bit in a minute. It provides the most direct connection along the western side. So when I mean that, it means between Storm Ranch and Yavapai Hills, it's up and over. One thing with this, I will say, alternative 3 versus alternative 7 had a different connection in there. This one used cut, the other one used fill. And so the cut, you don't see as much as you would the fill, if that makes sense. And so it scored better, but it ended up being more expensive also. So that's just something, if this ever did go further, to consider. So that's something I wanted to point out. It provides the opportunity to limit impacts and maximize conductivity to the proposed regional park trailheads. So we did meet with both the town and the city on the proposed park. And one, if they saw that the roadway would be a benefit to the park, and then also asking which of the alternatives, because we had all 7 of them at the time, would be most feasible and make more sense. And mostly it was on the eastern end that's really made a difference, and saying where you could, from a topography part, connect in and provide a trailhead, that would be the best. And they did see it as a benefit to getting a southern connection and a southern trailhead. And so that went into there, and that's what that bullet point is talking about. It provides the best connectivity to the existing development. A lot of the other alternatives are farther away, and so it's harder to get there. You would have to build another road that would go through some topographic features to get to that road. And then it has emergency response and evacuation routes are improved, and it's a high agency rating. The constraints. There is about 500, less than 500 feet of tall hillside excavation on the east side. And it's a pretty big excavation on the west side. So that connection in between Storm Ranch and Yavapai Hills has a lot of excavation in there. It's a pretty big cut. There is some steep roadways that exceed, they're about 9.5, I believe, real short segments, but there are segments that exceed and are about 9% grade. There's potential noise impacts. This is really directly from what we heard from the community and the public. They're concerned about the noise, so there are potential noise impacts due to the proximity of the existing properties. There are potential roadway design standard exceptions that would be required if implemented. It intersects wildlife corridors. Any build alternative will do that. An alignment is visible within multiple viewpoints of Yavapai Hills. So, and then there is a possibility for cut-through traffic. It's a lower possibility than alternative 7, but there is a possibility for it. And then the majority of the public input that we received, so majority of the public comments that were received, was not in support of this build alternative or a build alternative. And it is also the highest cost of the build versus no build. The no build opportunities. It leaves the natural land undisturbed. It maintains the current noise and visual characteristics. It maintains current wildlife corridor connections. Majority of the public input that we received includes support of this no build alternative. No added costs for right-of-way or utility needs, because you're not buying the right-of-way to build the road anywhere for that purpose. And there's no possibility of cut-through traffic in the neighborhood because there's no road being implemented. Constraints. It doesn't address the emergency response times exceeding the recommended standards. It does not improve any evacuation access. It does not address any congestion in this manner. As SR 69 is going to move forward in that report, there's going to be other ways that it looks at to address some of that congestion. But in this manner, if the no build stays, it would not address that congestion. Existing neighborhoods are limited to the southern access points. They maintain that they can only get out through that southern access, and then it's inconsistent with the long-term community plans. So what does it look like? I kind of showed it, but here's a nice graphic of it. It has 2 lanes in each direction. It has a 16-foot median. It's got a nice multi-use path on the north side and a 6-foot sidewalk on the south side with natural landscaping is what is recommended if the build alternative does move, ever gets implemented. From a build alternative, it is recommended that it be classified as a minor arterial roadway with a posted speed of 35 to 45 miles per hour. It has a desired max grade of 6%. With a up to 10, it doesn't quite get to 10, I would say, but for limited distances along the corridor. And as I mentioned, the fill 2 to 1 max and a cut at 1.5 to 1 max in that rock cut. Some traffic features. Again, we're working hand in hand with the 69 study and just what would the volumes look like in the models projected around 17,000 vehicles in 2050 or 2045? 50, yeah. In 2050 would utilize it. Oh, it's right there. And then the daily projections on Sundog. So in some of the segments that were on Prescott Valley would go down from 20 to 25%. And then on SR 69, when compared to the no build, we're looking at a 20 to 25% decrease in, I think this is around segment 2 or 3. Is that right? In your presentation earlier, around his segment 2 or 3. There is a slight increase in traffic, however, north on SR 69 of the connection. That's because it not only takes SR 69 some traffic, but other routes, right? So there are other routes people are going. They're taking Thane, they're using 89A to go around. This would make the SR 69 north slightly increased because there's another way across now. We also looked at travel time savings. So the travel time savings in the peak direction of travel, in the peak direction of travel during the peak time periods range from about 10 to 12%. Looked at those existing conditions, the no build alternative and the build alternative. It looks like if you look at the actual numbers, it looks like the build alternative basically brings it a little bit better than what we see out there today. But again, if we don't do anything is what this comparison is for. Other improvements will be evaluated in the SR 69 plan. From a cost perspective of the build alternative. So from a cost perspective, we broke this down into 5 segments. Segment 1 is really from the roundabout to the eastern end of Storm Ranch. Segment 2 is the part between Storm Ranch and the extension of Yavapai Hills. And then Unit 9. And then segment 4 is from the end of Unit 9 to the limit of the town on it. And then segment 5 is the town's segment to the end. So just using that jurisdictional limit to be between 4 and 5. To note, segment 1 cost is an approximate cost because we didn't design that area. You'll see in the plans that segment 1's not in there because it is assuming the design is the design that was already approved and set forth in those design plans that were final approved in the Storm Ranch. So the segment 1 is around 32 million. That includes right away. That includes all costs for that. Segment 2's about 67 million. Segment 3, 8 million, and then segment 4 and 5 are around 20 to 22 million dollars. An environmental overview was prepared, and it's a big appendix in this report, to inform the future environmental analysis requirements. And EO consisted of the existing environmental conditions, inventory them, and identifying of any environmental constraints in the project. Continued, if the project ever continues, continued environmental review should be completed with any future project development phases. The environmental, each of these alternatives really, we wanted to get into just really quickly some of the things we did. We did a view shed analysis because we heard that the visual was really important to the public. We did some EMAC coordination. We did some sensitive noise disruptor screening in the build alternatives, and at that segment, we met, as I said, with the park, both for the town and the city, in order to do the park compatibility review. We did some potential vegetation review, disturbance review, and then we did a cultural resource review and some wildlife habitat and connectivity review as we went through the alternatives. And that really helped us, especially that EMAC coordination, because we got information from Game and Fish on what the criteria and what they would really look at with that wildlife and habitat and connectivity evaluation. So from the environmental overview, two major components to consider and probably will need mitigation if this project ever moved forward would be noise mitigation and wildlife habitat and conductivity that is documented in both the environmental overview and in the report itself. Those should be greatly considered if ever moved forward, and mitigation strategies for both have been suggested within the report and the environmental overview. So again, we know those are two major things from the public that everybody is really concerned with, and those would need to be mitigated and further, and really studies would probably need to go, especially with the wildlife, in order to really see what are some of the migration and the areas that would, and the best way to address it as it moves forward. Public involvement, as Matt mentioned, we were in front of the public all the time, so it was many. So we updated the project website multiple times. We did multiple CYMPO newsletters. CYMPO did, and we helped in a couple. We did 2 stakeholder committee workshops. We did 2 public open house meetings. We did 1 digital survey, and we did 1 EMAC presentation. In addition, I know CYMPO, and then I went to a couple different smaller venues where we presented to different committees and different I think you went to the HOA possibly at least once, so different attaches at those points too. The first open house was in September of 2022 in Prescott. It had 93 attendees that were formal that signed in. We talked about the goals there, the existing conditions. We did a lot of engagement activities for the benefit and concerns and the corridor amenities at this public open house. Here's some pictures of the people that attended and just the functions that went on. There were 18 formal comment forms collected. 13 of them were opposed to the implementation of the Sundog Core Connector. 2 were supportive of it, and 3 were neutral. So about 72% were opposed, 11% supportive, and 17% were neutral at that time at the public meeting and in the comments that were actually received. Public open house number 2 was in September of 2023. The location was in Prescott Valley. We had 199 attendees sign in at this one. There we went over again, reviewed those goals and needs, the introduction and overview, but then we really went into the evaluation, and those 7 alternatives were presented. We had a slide on the traffic, the environmental, and then again did some engagement activity and did some forms. Of formal comments collected at the meeting and directly after the meeting associated with the meeting, we collected 60 comment forms. 52 of them were opposed to the Sundog Connector being implemented. 8 were supportive of the Sundog Connector. 7% were opposed that were collected, and 13% were supportive of these comment forms that were collected. We also received website comments. People, we always had, you can comment all throughout. So we had comments received on websites, direct emails sent to us and sent to others where we are still gathering that information. We had as I mentioned, those additional in-person where we gathered some comments at those. We had 178 comments submitted this way. 138 of them were from unique individuals. And so if we break that down, of those 138, 53 were in support, or 38% of the project being implemented. 63 of them were opposed to the build alternative being implemented, which is 46%, and 22% of them, or 22 or 16% were neutral. So we put together the draft plan, and with the draft plan, we had an open public comment period from January 31st through February 13th. So it just closed yesterday. We have received 8 comments. 7 of those comments are just comments, either support or in opposition, or questions that we've answered those questions. Those comments will be documented in an Appendix K that will be added to the final report. The 8th comment was from the ASLD comments. You should have a paper copy of those comments with you. And those comments really, the gist of all of their comments are that they want to see the ASLD land being highlighted or like noted more and clarified on both the plans and in each of the graphics within the report. We are planning on implementing that into both the text. There's, I think, 1 paragraph to be updated, and the exhibits and the plans. We are planning to do that and can turn that around and have a final version of that report with those direct implementations by next Wednesday. Now I'm going to hand it over back to Matt for the final couple of slides.
Thank you, Kate. So kind of as Kate said there, so when we talk about the DCR recommendation and the next steps there, so we've talked about, so alternative within the DCR, alternative 3 is the recommended build alternative that is recommended within the DCR. And then the no build is obviously the no build recommendation within the DCR as well. So if we just quickly to touch on, we've already talked about it there. So alternative 3 is going to provide that approximately 12% average reduction in travel times, 20 to 25% lower volumes along SR 69. Is going to overall have that opportunity to limit impact and maximize connectivity to the regional park trailheads. It's going to have that best connectivity to existing developments, and it's also going to improve that emergency response and those evacuation routes. So it does have that cost of approximately $151.5 million. So that is outlined within the recommended alternative for it, and also noting that the majority of the public comments received are not in support of the build alternative. So that is stated within the DCR. And of course, the impacts of the natural and built environment would need to be mitigated with a build alternative. And DCR recommendations on the no build, of course, leaves natural land undisturbed, maintains that current noise and wildlife character and connections. Majority of the public comments received are included support for the no build alternative. No cost for right-of-way, no impacts to utilities, but it does not provide any improvements to those emergency response times, those evacuation routes, or the congestion on SR 69. And the existing neighborhoods also have that limited to the southern access point for connectivity and inconsistent with overall long-term plans and some of those overall long-term planning documents within the region there. So those are the recommendations within the DCR, the Alt 3 build alternative, and along with the no build alternative for consideration if the project ever moves forward. Then next steps, I guess, and we'll kind of open it up for questions and any comments as well there. But the next steps would be, kind of we talk about it here, talk about the any questions, then the possibility of the receiving of the report, keeping in mind those improvement or those updates that will be made to the draft report based on the ASLD comments, but those updates would be made. They would be ready by Wednesday of next week. And then with further action moving forward to presentation to the CYMPO Executive Board.
I'm sorry, Matt, for the record and for the public, ASLD, Arizona State Land Department.
Arizona State Land Department, correct.
Thank you.
State trust land. From there, I will bring it for open discussion.
We'll start with Heather.
I just wanted to say thank you for 2 years of hard work to get us to where we're at so we can make a better decision on how to move forward. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Dan?
So am I correct? You're going to make a few more edits?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
Can I add one?
Sure.
I'm kind of looking through the report while
Okay.
this has all been going on.
yes.
Your figure 8, it shows your existing drains and floodplain areas. It has a sundog connector alignment on it.
Okay.
I would recommend you change that to 3, alternate 3. Currently, it looks like it's kind of just a generic yellow line on there. But just for clarity's sake, because it's kind of the first map you come to in the report while you're flipping through it as far as alignments go. And I think maybe it should be a little less generic since this study's been done. And secondly, thank you both. I know this has been a arduous process, and it's, I think there's been a good, strong attempt to include the public on this. I appreciate all of your time and efforts. I know it's been hard. I know it's been hard for CYMPO staff as well. This is why we do what we do, is to put these things forward. This was the will of our executive board to do this study, and I'm happy to see that it's coming to a close here. We have something that we can all stand behind, and I hope you all are proud of it as well, because you've done a very nice job on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank?
Thank you. And I got a couple questions, but I want to kind of preface this of giving you my perspective. First of all, I come at this from a couple points of view. One being from Chino Valley and representing Chino Valley. This doesn't really impact Chino Valley too much, as I think you guys described. Most of the traffic is flowing from Prescott to Prescott Valley in here. So I'd probably advocate for Great Western Connector. I know Vinny loves me mentioning that. So, but also as a member of the TAC and the liaison for the EMAC committee, want to look at this regionally as well and try and provide perspective. So a couple things that may be worth noting, and I don't know if you should note it, this study was based primarily on the corridor for Sundog alone, right? But if you open it up regionally, these wildlife corridors extend all the way through the CYMPO region. And even in EMAC, they were talking about the antelope go all the way up to Williams. That's how far they travel. So to say that the build or the no build might have an impact or no impact, it's just this specific area because it's 17,000 cars a day, I think. Those cars are going to probably go on 89A or 69, and those corridors still cross those roadways. So there's still a wildlife impact for that traffic. I don't know if that can be described at all in this study, because like I said, I think your focus is local on this corridor, but it may express a need for crossings on maybe to continue to look for crossings on 89A or 69 as well, because those cars can still impact the same wildlife in this area. And it still has the impact of emissions and noise, just not in this corridor, but also on 89A and 69. So as a committee, we need to look at those roadways as well and the impacts. Like Vamshi, if Sundog doesn't get built in $150 million, I doubt it will anytime soon. But then that noise and traffic and emissions with the delays that are on 69 would increase it in that area and perhaps have effects of the whole region. So I just wanted to make that note that as we look regionally, that the traffic is going to be in the area no matter what. It's just a question of which specific area it's in. And I guess that was more of a comment than a question, but my question is, the Storm Ranch was approved. Who approved that? Were you talking about the local agency approved those design plans. Is that correct? Okay, so it'd be Prescott probably
Yes.
through their development process. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear on that, so. All right, and was I somewhat accurate that this study was so focused on solely on this corridor, so you really can't speak more regionally as far as things like that?
Correct. It was more looking within the study area within
Okay.
the pro.
All right, thank you. And a very, like I said, I want to express to others, I've worked with you guys back when you were URS, so know you well, and a lot of good work there, and 2 years is a long time for a DCR, and I think a lot of due diligence has occurred here, and I think overall the community's better for it. We've got a lot more education and enlightenment, whether this occurs or not, that of what the effects are either way. Thank you.
Just a question. This is more for CYMPO staff probably, but is the intention that this same presentation will be given to the executive board?
Mr. Chair, members of the TAC, Member Cherry, that's our intent, is that you've received this presentation based upon your comment. It is my intent that we would repeat this, possibly refining a few of the points based on your input. And again, Dan, we stand ready for additional input. If there's part of this that you feel the executive board would benefit greater, or if there's something we overlooked, by all means, please provide us input.
Did John have anything? I know he's online. No. Okay, so I too would like to thank the CYMPO staff and AECOM. I kind of came into this near the end, but I can see the level of work and data and time that was put in and the efforts put into this document. Our role here is to make sure that we give the elected bodies the best information we can give them so that they can make the decision. And I want to thank the public too, because they really came out in droves to share with us their thoughts and whether this was okay or not okay. And again, whether it comes to fruition or doesn't come to fruition, I think this document was good work through the CYMPO agency and its partners. And so I just wanted to say that, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair, I'll make a motion to recommend the CYMPO executive board receive the Sundog Connector Design Concept Report and Environmental Overview Final Draft Report with the changes discussed here.
I'll second.
Okay, having a motion and a second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I think we're going to take a short break. We've been sitting here almost
I'm
2 hours.
sorry, Madam Chair, just if there was any public comment, if you wanted to.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't receive any public.
Yeah, and we don't have any cards, but just wanted to double check.
Any public? Okay,
Seen any.
seeing none, then we'll take about a 10-minute break and reconvene in 10 minutes. All right, moving on to agenda item number 9. Review, discussion, and possible action to recommend the expansion of the CYMPO planning boundary. Presenter, Vinny Gallegos.
Thanks, Chair, members of the TAC. Staff will be like auctioneers for the rest of the agenda. We'll get this going. This is a follow-up to the strategic retreat. What I'm looking for today is a formal action to go on to the executive board. The consensus, if we can pull up on the screen the image of the map, we only have one page in your backup packet. And it's the image of the options A, B, and C for the expansion. Just briefly, the option A was to expand CYMPO boundaries south on 69 to I-17 to include all of 169. But the real consensus in the room from you and the executive board was for option B. Option B would include obviously all those things of option A, but it would take the CYMPO boundary to southern Yavapai County. Thank you for pulling that up, and western Yavapai County. Well, we discussed at the retreat that this is a bit of a sticker shock from a land mass situation. When you start digging into the weeds, it's not that dramatic. When you look at the population is currently, we're at 143,000 currently. To take in option B would increase the population a little over 20,000. And then more important, in this greater geography, but we're doing the regional transportation network, and we're looking at, if you will, the I-40s, the 89s, the highway to the Baghdad mine, things like this of that nature. We're also looking at the movement of people, goods, and services. So again, how is the mobility of people in southwestern Yavapai County accessing services in the greater Prescott area? So with that said, today, I'm looking for an action formally from you to go on to the executive board, giving staff the direction to pursue the boundary expansion from, as it is currently recognized on this map as the base, to go to option B. I will note in closing, someone, I think it was one of you, made a good suggestion at the retreat that we were cutting Black Canyon City in half by the I-17 line, and that adjustment has been made to encompass all of Black Canyon City. Again, at this time, open to any other edits or changes, but again, we're looking to move forward with conversations with Federal Highways to make this official in the next few months. Happy to take questions or comments.
Comments from the committee?
Thanks, Vinny. I was the one that made that comment.
Oh, great.
I appreciate that very much because it, that's a community that we work in pretty regularly. So I'd be happy to make a motion if you'd like one, Chair.
And I'm sorry, Mr. John Hughes has his hand up too, Dan and Gwen.
Or I'll defer to John first.
John? I think he's still muted.
John, you're muted. Can you have your hand up if you have a question or comment?
Sorry about that. I was just was going to do a motion also to approve and recommendation of option B from the CYMPO boundary expansion study.
John, do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah, hearing a motion, a second. All those in favor? Aye. Moving on to item 10, review, discussion, and possible action to recommend the consultant selection for the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Presenter Brinson.
Get some audio going. Thank you, Chair Roach, members of the TAC. You all, as our technical committee, are very well aware that the long-range transportation plan is the Bible that we utilize to address regional transportation in the central Yavapai region. So we launched our every 5-year update of this plan. It is a federal mandate that we update this plan every 5 years. It is a 25-year forward look. We are currently operating out of our TP 2045, so we have initiated procurement for our TP 2050. We posted that RFP back in mid-November after the executive board gave us authorization, and that procurement period concluded on January 5th. That was a little bit cruel of us to do that to the firms over the holidays, but notwithstanding, we had a single submittal, which is quite unusual in CYMPO's realm with RFPs. I think it, if I'm being editorial for a moment, is frankly a reflection of how busy everyone is, how much funding is available, how many funding pots there are to pursue, and there's just a myriad of work out there right now. And I think all of our consulting partners are quite busy. So we did get a single response to the RFP. That response came and proposal came from Kimley Horn and Associates. As you know, they're recognized statewide, but they're a national firm. They have quite a presence nationally. They're on the cutting edge of transportation and innovation. And they did submit their proposal on January 5th. We convened a scoring and review committee that consisted of 3 individuals, one of your TAC members, Member Cherry, a member at large from the community, which was Ted Gambogi, he's also council member for the city of Prescott, and Pedro Rodriguez, our member agency, Prescott Valley Transit. So, Yavaline Transit, rather. So we convened that scoring committee. They went through a standard procurement scoring and review process. We didn't treat this any differently based on a single submittal, but we did go through the additional motions of securing the approval of Yavapai County Finance and just the approval to go forward with a single submittal. So we have done our due diligence, and with the scoring and review committee's results, They have scored the Kimley Horn proposal. And they are, I think the subcommittee, if I'm asking Member Cherry to maybe speak on their behalf, would like to move forward with a recommendation.
I'd be happy to. Bryn, thank you. As Bryn touched on, we had a 3-member committee just to do a quick look at it late last week and early this week. The proposal was strong. It certainly met our expectations and requirements. We didn't feel it was necessary to take up all the TAC members' time on it, but I'm sure it can be made available to anybody that's interested in looking over the proposal. But I feel very comfortable moving forward with Kimley Horn. Chris, I believe, is on the call virtually as the project manager, and I would also like to point out that they worked on the Sierra Vista MPO regional transportation plan, so they have good experience here in Arizona doing that sort of work. They had prior experience with on some of their team members with other RTPs as well. I just lost my train of thought. I was going to say one other thing. That is that they have Kittleson as a part of the team with Vamshi and Phyllis and some other members of their office involved that have familiarity with our existing plan. So there is not only good familiarity by Kimley Horn on RTPs, but specifically on the team with ours, more importantly, in my opinion. So with that, I'll be happy to make a motion, but I'm more than happy to listen to comments or questions first. So,
Any other comments from the committee?
If I may, just on the scope and fee, was that reasonable and within the budget?
I can answer that if you'd like, Bryn. It is right at what we had budgeted, like almost pennies under.
Amazing how that always works.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And the schedule was realistic, I believe, as well. So
What was the schedule?
I think they're finishing up early 2025, if I'm not mistaken, like first quarter 2025.
That's correct.
We have someone online.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce to you Chris Joannis. He's a member of the Kimley Horn team, and he does work locally here with the Prescott team. Chris, would you like to talk to the TAC?
Sure. Thank you, Bryn, and thank you all for your time this afternoon. Appreciate you all going through your due diligence and reviewing our proposal. We're very excited to work on this regional transportation plan with you. As you mentioned, Kittleson is on our team, who we felt was a very strong partner on this, and so we feel like we have good experience that we can bring to the region, and just looking forward to getting started. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, if there's no further comment, Chair will entertain a motion.
I would be happy to make a motion to recommend the executive board approve the selection of Kimley Horn for the 2050 regional transportation plan.
You have a motion and a second.
Sorry.
All right, moving on to item 11. Lost my place there for a minute. Review, discussion, and possible action to recommend approval of amending the FY 22-23 Unified Planning Work Program and the FY 22-26 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, the MTIP. Presenter Vinny Gallegos and Allison McCarthy with CYMPO.
Thank you, Chair, members of the TAC. I'll quickly walk through this with you. As I referenced earlier in our meeting, we have a few amendments. Item number 1 is of great acknowledgement on my part. We are proud to be able to expand our staff to include one additional employee, and that is Pedro Rodriguez. That is part of this amendment that shows him in the organization chart. Again, this goes back to the retreat discussion as to CYMPO formally moving forward with the oversight and management of the Yavaline transit system. So that is part of that action. Pedro will be coming over. We'll be honoring his PTO time and what he's built up in Prescott Valley, and he will be paid out through the 5307 CARES Act funds of transit. So for our purposes, no real budget changes, but this goes to the spirit of the chair's comments earlier of us all working together with transit. Item number 2 is just updates for different committees for 2024. It's in your packet. Item number 3, this outlines, and what this is not in any way setting anything in stone. What this is going to allow staff and you as a TAC is to let's have some conversations is what this is about. But we do need to have it in our work program so that we can be able to bill against it. Staff is starting to spend some time in this area. You know, probably most noteworthy, we've talked about wildlife corridor study, so I don't know that that's a new thing, but we are looking at bringing something to you as a TAC for your consideration that we may invest some dollars in these types of plans. This was also discussed at the retreat that ultimately a goal was suggested by the town of Prescott Valley, the town manager, Gilbert Davidson. He has previous work in southern Arizona and Pima County. They've done a conservation plan. Staff has started to look into what that might look like for our region. We know that a lot has been talked about as it relates to wildlife, open space, trails, and CYMPO staff is evaluating where we might be able to support that. So that is noting that in the work program. And then with regards to the tip, thank you, whoever's scrolling. Just updating, some of you had the success of pursuing for some additional transportation alternative funds, Chino Valley for 103,000. Prescott Valley for the shared use network at 357,000, and for the multi-use path of Deep Well and 89, I believe that's a Prescott project if I remember right, 197,000. And again, the information for you all is even though you've applied for them or the locals applied, because they're federal funds, they are required to be in the MPO's Transportation Improvement Program. With that said, Chair, happy to take questions or comments.
Sorry, doing a lot of talking here. Vinny, I noticed on your work element 200 regional planning projects, you also had mention of a electric vehicles plan that didn't make your list there on the slide. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. And my apologies for it not ending up on the summary slide. We'll be sure to have that as part of the executive board summary sheet. And this is another thing, Dan, we want to be able to bring some more information back to you for your consideration. By no means is this a go in any way, but staff is starting to do the research with some of the funding sources that are available to us. Again, one of them is that carbon reduction funding that you and I are working closely with the city of Prescott on, Dan, and the county. And we would like to be able to bring back to you as a staff that, you know, is there interest and is there just interest by your local agencies of CYMPO leading some type of EV plan of some kind? So we want to just be able to bring that back for discussion. So at this point, it's I would probably strike initiate, and I think we did in one of our staff meetings. Sorry about that. I would just leave it short of the verb of initiate, but all those we just want to bring down to back for discussion.
Yes, the paper we received in our packet does not have the word initiate on any of those four, so you must have done that. So,
yeah, thank you.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
You bet.
Comments? All right. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to recommend the executive board approve amending the FY 24-25 Unified Planning Work Program. I like to call it UPWUP, just because I like to hear that. And the FY 22 to 26 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, the MTIP, as presented.
I'll second the UPWUP and the MTIP.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Item number 12, Regional Transportation Safety Plan. Presenter Bryn Stotler and Mike Blankenship with Greenlight Engineering.
Thank you, Chair Rowich. Members of the TAC, as you are well aware, we initiated a regional transportation safety plan update a little over a year ago with our partners, Metro Plan of Flagstaff and NACOG. It does focus on the entire northern Arizona region with the exception of the western border and Mojave County. So Mike Blankenship and his capable traffic engineering team has been working on crunching a lot of public safety data from all of our public safety agencies. They have established a crash history for the period of 2017 to 2021. And they're also in the process of bringing even the additional years of 22 and 23 into our crash data analysis. But Mike is here to give you basically the download of the final plan. So we are very excited to have him present the work of his team. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mike.
Thank you, Bryn. I'm trying to share my screen here, so let me know when the full slide is up and you can see it.
See it. 1 second, though. See if we can get it. Okay, it'll be on the small screen just for the benefit of the TAC, just because Mike's going to drive. So,
okay,
go ahead, Mike.
So we're good. All right, thanks, Bryn. Yeah, just a quick summary of some of the key points from the safety plan, and then want to spend a couple of slides on really what I see as the most important part of the plan, which is the implementation piece, which really is in your hands now. So let's get right into it here. And I know some of you have seen this before in some of the previous presentations, but just quickly, the overall vision for the CYMPO region for the regional safety plan is shown on the screen there, basically providing a transportation system for safe and efficient movement through the region. The goal is critical there in terms of going after some of the federal pots of safety money. So you really need that Vision Zero, setting a timeline for this aspirational goal of getting to 0 deaths on our roadways. Probably will never happen in any of our lifetimes, especially until we get, a lot of autonomous vehicles out there. But that is the goal, and that really is one of the key criteria for going after federal Safe Streets and Roads for All funding, which we'll talk a little bit more about here in a second. As Bryn said, we did crunch through 5 years of data. We looked at various factors, human factors and violations and crash types and crash locations, and really settled on these 4 emphasis areas. And that's not to say that other emphasis areas aren't important, like pedestrian crashes and bike crashes. All of them are important, but these were the 4 that kind of rose to the top of the list there. So intersection crashes, running off the road or lane departure, which would include head-on crashes, speed-related crashes, and then really a high number of elderly driver crashes, especially fatal and serious injury crashes in the region. So a lot of information in that safety plan, about 300 pages worth, including all the appendices. We've provided potential projects pretty much for all of the local agencies within the CYMPO region, starting on page 245 of the safety plan, 50 different projects. Now it's time to start selecting a few of those from your perspective, local agencies, cities, counties, tribes, and doing something with the data from that safety plan and the recommendations. I do want to point out, Safe Streets, SS4A, Safe Streets and Roads for All funding, $1 billion a year. This safety action plan feeds right into a grant application to go after some of the implementation funds, the actual design and construction funds, as part of that $1 billion a year that the feds are handing out. And a lot of the information that you would need to populate that SS4A grant is already there in this plan. And I've just highlighted a few of the things here in terms of bullets. But number one, they make you self-certify that you hit 9 different criteria with your safety action plan. This safety plan hits all 9 of those criteria, one of them being that Vision Zero goal. It also, when you go after the implementation funds for SS4A, you need to show that you've looked at a high injury network and the crash data. That's in your safety plan. Pull it, cut and paste right out of the safety plan, add it to your application. Did your safety plan identify potential projects and what they are and how much they might cost? Yep, it's in there. Did it conduct an equity analysis? It's in there. Pull it right out of the plan. Did you use or identify effective practices and strategies? Yes, we did. In fact, we identified over 70 strategies in the safety plan. And most of them focus on the 4 E's: engineering, education, enforcement, emergency services. So you've got those in there. A lot of the strategies came directly from the Federal Highway Administration. 28 proven safety countermeasures. I think Bryn or Desi or someone had handed those out to you folks. But as you'll see here in a minute, when we talk about some HSIP applications, we hit on a lot of those proven safety countermeasures. Just a quick overview. They've had 2 rounds of the SS4A implementation grant funding, and the projects that are being funded, just wanted to highlight a few of the key factors that I'm seeing in projects that are getting awarded, these big bucks. Most of them are corridor-wide or jurisdiction, citywide, countywide types of projects, as opposed to going after a single intersection project. And that's not to say you can't go after that, but most of these are being awarded to hit a specific corridor, several miles or multiple corridors. So keep that in mind. Most of them are big ticket item projects, 10 million and up to 25 million. In fact, this last round, one of them that was funded was a $29 million, but they kind of have a cap at 25 million. They will make some exceptions. So if you are interested in going after SS4A, go big. The next call is coming out here within the next week or two, and typically Federal Highway Administration or US DOT gives about 2 or 3 months to put those applications together. The applications require a 10-page narrative, and a lot of that narrative are those points on the previous slide that I already mentioned, that all you have to do is cut and paste and pull it right into your application. So next steps from an implementation standpoint for you guys. We've done the safety plan. Let's not let it sit there and collect dust. Let's start trying to implement and use some of the strategies and potential projects that were identified in the plan. So you've got a list of priority projects that you can consider that are in the plan. Each agency in CYMPO has a list of high intersection and high segment locations based on the crash data analysis. Pick a couple of those. Go after an SS4A grant. Go after HSIP, which we'll talk about on the next task or the next agenda item. Work with your local stakeholders, your key stakeholders, your law enforcement, the local schools, and select a few of these 4E strategies that are in the safety plan and implement them. Go after not only the typical safety funding of ADOT's HSIP and the SS4A, but you've got your transportation alternatives. Make use of the Governor's Office of Highway Safety funding. And I know some of the local police departments already do this, but they hand out money every year for enforcement activities, for education activities, mainly associated with the softer side of the strategies that we're talking about, not necessarily engineering projects. But again, that's a funding pot that you can use to address these safety concerns. With that, I will open it up. I know that was a quickie. Open it up and we can do a deep dive into anything and everything in the safety plan. But I know you guys have been sitting there a while also, so I guess I'll open it up questions and comments.
Questions from the committee? I'm not hearing any questions from the committee.
Okay, I think that's it on this agenda item. I didn't know if Vinny or Bryn wanted to say something before I jump into the next item.
Yeah, we'll let the chair move us to the next item, and then I'll have something to say. Thank you, Mike.
Right, moving to our final item on the agenda today. Review, discussion, and possible action to recommend projects for the HSIP application. Vinny Gallegos, Bryn Stotler, and Mike Blankenship with Greenlight Engineering.
Thank you, Chair and members of the TAC. So I think Mike gave us a great segue into this item. You know, and we had a workshop that some of you were able to attend, and those that weren't will get you up to speed today. What's critically important, though, I so appreciate what Mike Blankenship just said, and with incredible respect for his work in Arizona, his expertise, and the team that he's assembled, he's really put together an incredible document for us as a region, for you as local municipalities. And I really want to echo what he said. I don't want this to just gather dust, because this document is money for you and for the region. He's outlined a number of projects that he's worked with your staff on, he's worked with you on, he's worked with the CYMPO staff on. And what we're going to attempt to do in this HSIP Highway Safety Improvement Program discussion is be able to start to deliver some of those projects. What the clarity, though, I would like to try and offer, please note, one of his last slides is this is only one type of federal funding available. We, the region, you as locals, can absolutely pursue Safe Streets for All, the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. There's a number of things. So as we go through this discussion, keep the safety plan close by. Now we're going to shift gears, though, into a particular program, Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP. This is a program that we have worked with before. 2 years ago, we were successful in hiring Mike and his team. CYMPO spent around $20,000. We were able to bring back about $4.5 million to the region. We, through your recommendation or those before you, made the recommendation for 3 projects at that time. One was the traffic signal at Gale Gardner and Fair Street. One was for an additional turn lane on Williamson Valley and Stasinski Road. And then the other one was on Highway 69 improvements in front of the Costco area, some additional capacity on the highway and safety improvements. So the reason I identify that for you is this is 2 years later. We're going to repeat the process. There's a little over $70 million available, as there was 2 years ago, for these type of projects. What the purpose of today's discussion is to really narrow down those projects that you want to pursue. I want to be abundantly clear. You as the locals are in the driver's seat. CYMPO absolutely stands side by side with you to assist you, to support you. The monies that we do have programmed set aside right now is we've hired Greenlight Traffic Engineering to help facilitate this discussion. We've hired Greenlight Traffic Engineering to prepare and help you with the materials for a successful application. The ultimate signature, though, on the application is not Greenlight, is not CYMPO. It is you as the local agencies. It is the cities, the towns, and the county that ultimately own this project. Those projects that I acknowledged earlier and the ones that Mike will walk you through may be funded anywhere from 95 to 100% federal funds. The traffic signal, a football field from here that was awarded was 100% $1 million federal HSIP project. That is one example of the capabilities of this. Some of the discussions that the TAC just had on Monday, and it's absolutely important to put that on the table, is there is a bit of a juggling act of yes, it's additional funds to your CIPs or your local budgets, but there's also requirements that come with that. There's a federal obligation and burden, and there may be cost overruns. I think the program has done great positive improvements to try and anticipate cost overruns if that's even possible. They have worked on improving the scoping and the projects. They have done many things that if you need me to, we can get into the specifics. But what Mike is going to try and do is summarize the discussion we had on Monday with those that could attend. If you weren't, he's going to introduce some projects. What CYMPO is looking at doing is sponsoring at ideally one project for each region, meaning that Prescott would get one project, Prescott Valley, the county, ADOT, Dewey, Humboldt, and Chino Valley. Now, as I said that, a given community may not have a project. We still are intending to sponsor about 5 projects. If a given community does not identify a project, we may sponsor more than one project because of that community not identifying one. Maybe we sponsor 2 in a given area. That's part of this discussion. The other thing that I would offer to you as local municipalities is Mike's quoted cost for the work related to an application is around $6,000. That is eligible to you as a local. That while we may sponsor one project for your area, you are more than welcome as a member agency of CYMPO to work through this contract, hire Mike for additional projects. So we'll just pick on City of Prescott for a moment, Gwen. If you were to identify 3 projects at this time, CYMPO has budgeted monies for at least one project. And if you were to identify in your budget an additional $12,000, you could essentially identify 2 more projects through this contract. And again, not that this is the rule of thumb, but we've seen around $1 million per project. I believe the minimum threshold is 500,000, but to spend $6,000 and get $1 million of 100% federal funds or 95 is a pretty sweet deal. So given a pretty good intro, Mike, I guess I'll turn it over to you if I missed anything. And then Mike is going to launch into specific projects, and he's had all of 48 hours to tweak Monday's conversation. So we'll see where he's at. Mike.
Thanks, Benny. You guys can still see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So yeah, this really just 2 slides here. The first one, we kind of came to consensus Monday in the work meeting on these potential project applications. So I just wanted to give a little bit more information on them. So a couple with the county. Each of these are about 2 miles long of adding shoulders, paved shoulders. So on Williamson Valley Road, basically 2 miles starting just north of Pioneer Parkway, going up to near Lariat Lane. And we're going to look at a couple things there, because there's some bicyclist traffic through here and some other reasons why we might want to go with wider than normal rural shoulder width. So typically on these rural road applications, we're looking at 5.5 feet of paved shoulder. We're going to look at that, but we're also going to look at maybe going to the ADOT standard on rural roads, which is 8 feet width, and just see if we can get a decent benefit cost number out of the 8-foot wide shoulders. And that's really what these applications are ranked by, is the benefit cost. So basically, how much does the project cost, and what are your safety benefits you're getting out of it in terms of reduced crashes? There's a societal dollar number attached to those crashes. And the higher the BC ratio, the better your chances of getting awarded the project funding. With these paved shoulders, they would include a couple of those Federal Highway Administration proven safety countermeasures, safety edge, which is basically just at the edge of the shoulder, the pavement would have basically a wedge as opposed to a 90-degree edge drop off once the surrounding soil wears away. And then rumble strips, if possible, centerline and or shoulder rumble strips. On Williamson Valley Road, that's probably only going to be feasible on that southern section near Northern Parkway or Pioneer Parkway. Once you start getting away from there, you're getting into residential houses close to the road, and the noise impacts from rumble strips usually prevents you from putting the rumble strips in. But where you can get them in, we do recommend that. Second one with the county up in the Paulden area, Big Chino Road, basically from State Route 89 to Mitchell Road. Again, paved shoulders. In this case, we're going to limit it to the 5 foot and see how much we can, what length we can get. But we're looking at 2 miles starting out with, and again with rumble strips where feasible. City of Prescott, a systemic citywide speed feedback sign project. And we're going to look at really all the major roads. So Willow Creek, Gurley, Whipple, Ruth, but as many roads as we can get into this package. The last HSIP application cycle, City of Lake Havasu City was awarded about $1 million to put in 40 speed feedback signs, solar powered, on 10 of their high priority corridors. So I think it's a proven safety countermeasure, and it's been proven that ADOT will fund those types of projects. We're also going to look at a potential citywide intersection signing and marking enhancements project. So this could include, enhanced pedestrian warning signs, high visibility pedestrian crosswalks, the reflective borders around signal backplates. So we'll look at various treatments there, fairly low cost treatments, so that we can hit as many intersections as possible in that citywide systemic type of application. And then with Town of Prescott Valley, similar to the first one there for the City of Prescott, speed feedback signs on major roads. In this case, we're going to try to, and I've got to call into ADOT, try to do not only the permanent solar powered speed feedback signs, but also maybe include some portable, the trailers that have the speed feedback signs, so that you can move them around and keep that element of surprise going when you put those speed feedback signs out on various roads. Again, key corridors there in Prescott Valley. So Glassford Hill Road, Robert Road, Lakeshore Drive, Viewpoint Road, maybe a few others that we'll throw in there, but really hitting the roads where you know that you've got a speeding problem, and we've got the crash data to show the speed related crashes with that. So before I jump to the next slide, I guess maybe see if there's any questions or comments on the local agency potential applications.
And I'm sorry, real quick, Mike, you threw out a number on Monday just to help the TAC out. There was a package of, I think, 40 of these speed feedback signs that came out to around $1 million. Is that what you roughly quoted the other day?
Yes, that's the one at Lake Havasu City. Yep.
Thank you.
Any comments from the county? Frank?
I've got a quick question. Sorry I couldn't be there. I had a conflict with the meeting Monday, but Mike, I know in the past, another agency I worked for, we applied for, I didn't realize they were doing systemic projects again, but we did a sign inventory and reflectivity assessment townwide. Would that type of project be feasible under HSIP nowadays?
Good question, Frank. And we actually did discuss that Monday, even though you weren't there. So that's one that I need to check with ADOT. They have not funded the last couple of cycles, but that could be because nobody's requested it, as opposed to they just don't fund them anymore. The last one I'm familiar with, Pima County did a countywide sign retroreflectivity and sign replacement HSIP project, and that was maybe 2 or 3 cycles ago. So yes, it has been done, and you're familiar with the one that you mentioned. So we can check on that, and if they are still doing that, would that be something Chino Valley might be interested in?
Possible. I'd have to discuss it with those that are above my pay grade, but we could look into that and see. That would probably be with Chino Valley, one of the only ones I can think of that might have a chance of qualifying based on cost benefit.
Okay. Yep. I will follow up with Larry Talley at ADOT and get a response on that.
I have a brief comment on that, and that is, we'd done one of those here in the CYMPO region quite a few years ago. It was a multi-year process, involved multiple jurisdictions. The county, I think, worked on like replacing signposts and everything with it, and it was a very difficult process to get clearances necessary for a new base that goes in the ground. So I think we ended up kind of just backing off a little and just doing sign panel replacements on existing posts. And then if we needed a new post in some of these cases, we would go back in after the fact and replace the post with an in-ground anchor and things like that. So keep that in mind. But I don't know how many signs the town of Chino Valley has, but it's a minimum 500,000. So I don't know if that's enough to replace every sign in the town or what your intent is on that. So.
Right. And just, I guess, what Mike was alluding to, I used to work in Kingman, and that was a larger town, but approximately 10 years ago, we got a grant to actually buy the inventory equipment and the reflectometers and implemented a sign inventory system through a systemic HSIP. But again, larger scale. So I'd have to look at all those criteria.
Yeah, that's a good question. And then on to the couple of Yavapai County discussed projects. I think the county is interested in both of them. Mike, we feel that Williamson Valley Road 1 may need to be shortened in length or something like that, especially if we're going to think about some kind of wider shoulders for that location, but also because of some of the other constraints with topography and guardrail and things like that there. But I'm very interested in pursuing both of those. We have a couple fatalities within each section, so it should actually come up with a very good BC ratio. It's sad enough to say that, but my feeling is the county should take advantage of that, and the widened shoulders, we try to do those whenever we're given an opportunity in the future. So, if there's a possibility for a couple county applications, I would be interested. Otherwise, we would, try to figure out a way to pay for a second one as well. So that's all my comments.
And
just a quick question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Dan, as we're working through this and trying to determine the limits, would it be Roger or Chris, either one, that if we have questions to reach out to?
Yes, they're both involved in the discussions. Chris has been excellent at this in the past and has been kind of the primary point of contact if you want to plan on talking with him. But Roger and Chris and I all had a lot of conversations about this, both before Monday's conversation and then afterwards too. So.
All right. And then finally, for the city of Prescott, I would say, I know Ian Mattingly was at Monday's meeting in my place. However, we've talked about these projects. The city would also be willing to entertain paying for a second application in order to apply for both of these projects. As I'm sure Ian shared with you, we've recently completed a speed and travel time study, of which these kinds of improvements, I think, would be beneficial to the community in meeting some of the goals of that study. So whatever we can do to, again, whether CYMPO pays for it or the city, we would like to move forward with both projects. Are there any other comments? Heather?
Thank you. Mike, I did speak with our police chief on this as well. I just wanted to make sure that this would be something that they found would be useful on these major corridors, and they are in concurrence with definitely Robert Road and Glassford there. I'm not sure about Lakeshore. I didn't really get into that. But definitely something we want to move forward with.
Excellent.
Chair, if I may, Mike, you'd mentioned the possibility of like speed feedback trailers. The county has experience both with the trailer types as well as like the mobile sign mounted types, that either have just a battery, or some of them have a small solar panel on them, but usually we try to move them around. Things that are fixed, I've had very little success with those in the medium term. They get a little bit of assistance up front, but if you leave them out there, and we have one on Williamson Valley Road that's been there for years, and people completely ignore it at this point. But if we pop some new ones in at different locations, we usually hang them off of an existing posted regulatory speed limit sign, leave them there for a couple weeks, and rotate them to some other location. We get requests all the time for people that want speed humps on their local roads and things like that. We're not fans of that because of a variety of factors, but they're invaluable. But I'm not sure how you paint the picture from an HSIP project if you're going to be moving them around and are expected to meet performance measures and things like that. So I know that's partly on you, Mike, to give it some thought and have some conversations with ADOT about what the possibilities are. But those are my thoughts. It's, if you're expected to meet performance measures on something and it's a fixed sign, I think there may be problems with that. So that's all.
And if I may, Chair, and to Member Cherry's point, yeah, I was schooled, and Mike just re-schooled us on Monday too, that there are some studies coming out that show some positive improvements. But to Dan's point, I guess I've always been of the mind that human behavior, me in particular, I mean, once it's there, you kind of it becomes part of the environment and no longer has that impact on people that might be speeding. But I do appreciate, I think it was Heather that threw out the innovative idea, and Mike seemed to go with it. Maybe there's a package of a blend of permanent and mobile speed feedback signs. And to Mike's credit, he's going to pursue that for now and see what kind of traction he could get with ADOT. So I appreciate Dan bringing that up. And one other thing I wanted to offer too was we did pass out this one sheet, the proven safety countermeasures. The reason for this is we wanted to generate a menu, or this menu's been generated by Federal Highways, but we wanted to generate brainstorming because this is where we're landing. And if this is it, this is great. But if there's maybe other projects that you might want to take into consideration as it relates to a safety project, look at this list and let that generate some ideas. I know Member Hughes has his virtual hand up, and I do want to say, John, we looked at Highway 69 in Kloss, and Mike is still trying to figure out some safety improvements. I'm assuming that's what you're about to comment or ask a question on, but we'll let you do that and then see if Mike came up with anything. But John, you had a question or comment?
Can
John,
you
we
hear me
can.
now, Vinny?
Yep, we can hear you now.
It's the delayed unmute. But the one I was concerned about is it's been on our books for 5 years or better, is South Wind River Drive on 169, about 1.2 miles up. It was a turning lane. There's been a couple accidents there, and then Kloss was the other one. But I'd mentioned it a couple of years ago. I just haven't heard anything since about that one.
Thank you, John, and I'll let Mike address that. Mike, the fatalities in the Dewey Humboldt area, you want to make a comment on?
So I didn't catch the first part of John's the intersection he was referring to. I know we've looked at Kloss and 69 and talked to ADOT about maybe some lighting there. The issue with at Kloss in getting HSIP is going to be meeting that minimum $500,000 construction that ADOT requires, and intersection lighting won't cost anywhere near that. But we're still taking a closer look at it, John. to see if we can come up with some things to beef it up that ADOT would approve of to get us to that minimum project cost. What was the other one, the other intersection?
Okay, and thank you for that. And then the other one was 169 at South Wind River, about a mile and 3/4 up by the church. There's been a couple of accidents there in the past, and we have money set aside to help with the design or whatever of that intersection.
Okay, we'll take a closer look at that one too, and I'll reach out to you, John, as if we have questions as we're looking at that.
Okay, and I thank you guys so much, and I'm sorry for the technical difficulties on my end today.
John. Sorry, I heard my name. Heather.
Mike, real quick, looking at these countermeasures, is it possible to pair not only the permanent feedback signs, but also pair that with the back plates of the retroreflectivity borders for those corridors?
Possibly. Well, yeah, actually we should, and maybe we turn it in instead of a systemic, maybe it's just, these are our 4 high priority corridors or 3, whatever it turns out to be. And these are the improvements we want to make on those speech feedback and the borders on the back plates. Let me just double check though, before I make any promises. I'll check with ADOT on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Frank?
I do have one more question. Mike, what was the funding source you talked about, the Governor's Council?
The Governor's Office of Highway Safety, GOHS, they usually work with local police departments and the county sheriffs and DPS, but they provide funding for mainly for, overtime for DUI checkpoints and those types of things. But they've also provided funding for educational type of campaigns that address some of the enforcement issues, speeding, DUI, distracted driving. But it's the GOHS, and they have a pot of federal money that they hand out every year. And it's similar to these others. You have to fill out an application.
Yeah, I can check with our PD, but I'm wondering if that's the source we got some of our feedback signs from, because I think we got some of ours from grant money.
Sheriff's office. So probably so. Like not a lot, like a couple a year kind of thing. Yeah. And I think that's where the trailers came from, before they had these mobile mounted ones. The trailers they're cumbersome to move around. You got to have a big wide spot to put them there. We love the little ones you can just hang right on a sign. If we have a specific location we want a radar feedback sign on, we'll install a new sign.
Yeah. And I think our PD usually follows the feedback signs with about a week or 2 of enforcement after that.
Right.
So just a heads up if you're in town.
And then Chair, Mike has just a little bit more. I want to set this up slightly. It's valuable for this body as a whole to be able to chime in for the state route system. I want to acknowledge that we do have Andy Roth. He was able to join us in the meeting. We also have Jason James representing ADOT. Again, they're representing ADOT. They're in the driver's seat, but it's also critically important that you as a body speak to the ADOT possible opportunities. I think at Monday's meeting, Andy said there was a number of other priorities, and we acknowledge that and the good work that ADOT's doing everywhere. But you also know that the example of us doing the 69 master corridor plan, again, we're taking the leadership on that so that we can prioritize segments and improvements. We're currently doing the roadway safety analysis on 89A. Again, these are these are priorities that you and staff and the executive board have approved and identified. So as Mike goes into this, I would ask for your strong consideration from some of these ADOT projects. Obviously, we want Andy's input and ADOT staff's input, but you need to have a voice in this, so that if we feel these are going to help out regional transportation, then please offer your 2 cents. With that said, Mike, you want to hit on that?
Yeah, and you kind of said what I was going to say at the intro into these two, but really this is an opportunity to go ahead and get a jump start on funding any recommendations that come out of that 89A RSA and the 69 corridor master plan. So this is an opportunity and you've got 2 fatal crashes there on this stretch of 69 where we're recommending raised median application, and it basically ties in to the existing median on either end of this 2.5 mile stretch between Stone Ridge and Navajo Drive. And then on 89A there up near Mingus Mountain, going up Mingus Mountain, basically a 1.5 mile stretch from the CMEX plant driveway there just west of Old Fane Road, all the way up to Legend, just west of Legend Hills Drive.
And if I can add to this one, maybe for Heather in the town of Prescott Valley, that one in particular, again, Heather, on a State Route 89A, again, yep, this is the state facility, but this is in the town limits. The residents of Prescott Valley have been reaching out to the region. You all approved us to do the RSA. We're doing, I think, $30,000 for that RSA. It's underway now. We'll be bringing you an update. Leslie Contreras is the project manager. I think there's some real basic parts to that we're all going to expect. We know that it's a speeding issue on 89A. We're familiar with that. We know the lack of shoulder improvements is a major issue. So I guess you can have 2 options on that. You could wait for the RSA to deliver the information, or there might be an opportunity to again do some shoulder improvements or other improvements. Again, we want to hear from ADOT on that, but you as local should also chime into this particular opportunity. Thank you, Mike. Gwen?
Heather?
So Vinny, I'll have to look at our town limits because I think we go in and out along 89A up there. It's not all within the town, but we'll definitely look at that. But the raised medians between Stone Ridge and Navajo would be tremendous. I see near misses there all the time with all the congestion and people driving down the center of the road. But I don't know what ADOT's thought is on that.
Andy, are you on the call now?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd say we'll have to discuss this one more internally on these 2 opportunities.
And I guess I would just offer up, if you would go after an application, this applies to any agency, but let's say ADOT goes after 69 median, and then for whatever reason, after the application has been submitted, even after it's been awarded, you can back out for there's lots of projects that have been granted eligibility for HSIP, and then for one reason or another they just don't happen. The funds are for fiscal year 27 and 28. Basically, design would be in fiscal 27, construction in 28. So there's still a couple years before anything would happen on any of these if you are awarded funding.
Jason, do you have anything to add?
And John Hughes has his hand up.
I'm sorry.
John.
Oh, John.
Sorry.
John?
Yeah. The mute, sorry, it takes 10 seconds for the mute to go down. Sorry guys. I'm game for whatever to support. I'm good with that. I just want to let you guys know that we're here for ADOT to help us, and we're here to help ADOT in whatever we can do. And Mike, great job on everything that you're doing for CYMPO and giving us all the information that you have.
Thank you, John.
Jason has his hand up.
Jason?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I just want to reflect what Andy said earlier as far as, yeah, we'll take a closer look at this, have this internal discussion on these opportunities, probably even involve our HSIP folks into the conversation too. So just again, just wanted to second what Andy said on this. Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion on this item? Great, hearing none, I think we're at the end of our very long agenda. Thank you, CYMPO staff and all our professional support. This meeting is adjourned.